Hi, and welcome to part 2 of week 6. Now we take a look at Baroque art in Northern Europe. The Netherlands, Flanders, and Holland continued to undergo extensive change during the Baroque era. By the 17th century, the once autonomous Flanders was once again under Catholic Spanish rule, and the new United Dutch Republic enjoyed a somewhat uneasy freedom from Spain. As we've seen happen in chapters and centuries past, the artists of the Netherlands shared some aspects of Italian Caravagesque Baroque style, while rejecting or altering other aspects of the style. Northern European artists also used a style that was more painterly, with loose brushstrokes favored over the more precise style of the Renaissance. Northern European artists also used a range of thicknesses in their paint, like Italians did, and painted with an expressive quality not often found in art of the Renaissance. But art of Holland and Flanders was very distinct from Italian Baroque. The art market of the Netherlands was more egalitarian in several ways. The working and merchant middle classes were larger and more powerful than they were in Italy. Even people of what we would consider a blue-collar status had sufficient spending money to buy artwork. Because the patronage of art in the Netherlands was different, the subject matter was also different. Portraits, still lifes, genre paintings, which we'll talk about soon, and landscapes were all highly popular, and not just among upper classes. In Protestant Holland, the Counter-Reformation had little effect on the art market, as did the Caravagesque tenebrism of Italy. The way art was made was also quite different. Throughout the Netherlands, art was created in large workshops, in which master artists taught a number of students to be apprentices. These apprentices helped the master artist to finish a larger number of works at a time. This allowed the artist workshop to produce a larger number of works and to charge less for them, making them available to a larger audience. And unlike in Italy, master artists in Northern Europe, like Holland and the Netherlands and Flanders, master artists did not have to be particularly well connected in order to become successful, very different from Italy. So this section examines styles and types of subject matter popular in the Netherlands during the Baroque era. Italian influenced painters. Peter Paul Rubens was a German artist who lived in Catholic Flanders. He joined the Antwerp Painters Guild at a young age. Rubens studied and traveled throughout Italy. He had an artistic life similar to many Italian artists, working for the Duke of Mantua and gaining commissions from royalty like Marie de' Medici, Queen of France. Rubens spent considerable time in Rome studying Italian artists. His works are said to combine the Caravaggio and Carracci traditions of Baroque Italy. The influence of Caravaggio is seen in many aspects of Rubens' Catholic works. In the raising of the cross, for example, the cross looks as if it could fall right out of the picture plane into the viewer's space. But the golden lighting and round, powerful figures were Rubens' own unique contributions. You can see several other examples by Rubens here in the lecture and in your textbook. Rembrandt van Rijn was a Dutch artist, and living in Holland was unbound to the rules of the Council of Trent. Yet he internalized the style of Caravaggio and created his own expressive version of Baroque. His Night Watch is celebrated as a masterpiece of tenebrism. In Anatomy Lesson, Rembrandt transforms what could be a typical Dutch group portrait into a dramatic moment a la Caravaggio's Counter-Reformation pieces. Rembrandt was also a very prolific print artist. He was innovative in his frequent use of etching, a technique that allowed for a more sketchy, expressive image, as in Christ with the sick around him. Like Rubens, Rembrandt eventually controlled a large workshop and employed many students who studied his style. This fundamental difference between Italian and Netherlandish art making has become a problem for museums. Western art museums value authenticity above just about anything else, and the definition of an authentic Rembrandt painting is problematic. Not only did some unethical art dealers occasionally change signatures, as we'll see below in the case of Judith Leister, many artworks were signed Rembrandt by others, but with the authorization of the artist. A recent crisis in Rembrandt scholarship caused several paintings once thought to be by the hand of Rembrandt to be deattributed, with some later reattributed again to the artist. The Rembrandt Research Project was created in part to deal with these problematic attributions. This crisis reveals much about the modern Western art world and how it tends to impose its own value system on the past. Rembrandt, who also studied in Italy, takes after Caravaggio in many ways. However, it isn't the grand religious images that make him so popular today, but rather his portraits. Rembrandt often used himself for a subject, and his self-portraits are among the most sensitive ever created. Still lifes, or stilleven. The English term still life originates in the Dutch term stilleven, and indeed this genre has been associated with Northern Europe since the late Renaissance era. The word stilleven means something like frozen life or dead life, and it is meant simply to imply the capturing of life on the still or frozen canvas. Many Dutch and Flemish artists like Clara Peters, Rachel Ruijs, Peter Klaas, and others created still lifes, the proper plural of the term by the way, for middle-class patrons throughout the 17th century and beyond. The subjects were floral arrangements, meals, especially with, as you can see, pretzels and fruit and meat, and groupings of objects that suggested a moralizing theme. While Italian artists and patrons largely dismissed still lifes as superficial and lacking the proper seriousness of Counter-Reformation art. In fact, Netherlandish artists painted still lifes with morals and messages that could be read by the viewer. Most still lifes could be classified as vanitas paintings. Vanitas is a Latin word that means vanity, and all the connotations associated with that word. You will read much more about the concept of vanitas for your assignment for this week. The content of vanitas paintings was popular with the upper middle class especially, but seemed to have cross-class appeal. Meditation on a vanitas image was supposed to enhance the viewer's understanding of the transient nature of life, and therefore help him or her focus on attaining the afterlife. This is my favorite. The bird contemplating his own existence. Landscapes. Landscape painting has been a tradition in Northern Europe since the Middle Ages, when artists would often insert a Flemish or Dutch landscape into a biblical scene. Think of the Portinari altarpiece, for example. During the 17th century, the burgeoning art world made a new market for these images, and landscape painters would create beautiful images of Northern Europe without the need for other subject matter to justify it. Albert Cuyp, Jacob van Ruysdael, and Jan Vermeer are three artists who specialize in landscapes, among other subject matter. You can see a few examples here. Distant View of Dordrecht by Albert Cuyp, Habermas Avenue at Middelharnis, Jacob van Ruysdael's View of Haarlem, and many of these are extremely tiny. You can see that here, 22 inches. You can see a close-up of the buildings in the foreground and the little windmills. My favorite. Dutch artists with large workshops took on many kinds of commissions, including portraits and genre paintings. Frans Hals, Judith Leister, and Jan Vermeer were three such artists who made great use of genre subject matter, which could be scenes from any activity in daily life. The point of these images was to instill joy in the viewer. Sometimes, as with still lifes, these images could also have a moralizing tone. Popular subjects for genre painting included musicians, young lovers, jolly topers, that is, happy drunks, Pickled Herring, who was this fictional character, there he is, Pickled Herring, who had a bit of a drinking problem, and children playing with toys or animals. You can see lots of examples here. Good examples of genre paintings, very popular. Another popular genre subject was the prostitute propositioning or being propositioned. Along this line was the procuress subject. In examples of the procuress motif, like in the von Honthorst example here, and the Vermeer example there, the procuress or madam, who's usually a hag-like figure, right here and here, eagerly sets up the prostitute with the client. Of course, these images are meant to be enjoyed as suggestive of sexuality and as images of beautiful women. However, a moralizing theme is understood no matter how far below the surface. But the Leicester version, which is known as the proposition, is striking for its private setting and the discomfort of the would-be client and prostitute. Proposition, which you're seeing here, is interpreted by most art historians as turning the procuress motif on its head and removing it from the romanticized and sexualized realm of the brothel. A woman who appears to be sewing quietly in a home is approached by a man who offers her a handful of coins, which she appears to reject and ignore. Leicester's version is praised for its realism and in portraying the average woman's encounter with a proposition. Leicester and Hals were both leading artists in Harlem during the height of genre painting production. Although Leicester was remembered and praised by the city of Harlem for many years after her death, her memory eventually succumbed, as so many female artists did, to history, and her works were attributed to Franz Hals. While this was possible due to systematic sexism, in large part it was also the greed of an art dealer that allowed history to forget Leicester. A dealer altered her signature to imitate Hals and sold this painting, I believe it was, to the Louvre as a Franz Hals painting. Since the discovery of this deception, art historians like Frima Fox-Hofrichter have worked to reattribute paintings to this apparently prolific and well-loved genre painter, who was born actually to working-class brewery owners. You can read about a 2009 exhibition of her works in the link in the lecture. That wraps up this week's section on Baroque art of Europe, and next week we'll learn about the academic styles Rococo and Neoclassicism.